So, in this episode today, we're honored to welcome Nicole Bromley, the founder of OneVoice, a global initiative committed to breaking the silence surrounding sexual abuse and human trafficking. Nicole's work has empowered countless of survivors to share their stories and find hope, and her advocacy has been instrumental in educating communities worldwide. Join us today as Nicole discusses her mission, her experiences, and her message of hope for all who are ready to move from victim to victor. Welcome to the show, Nicole. Such an honor to have you here.
Oh, the honor is mine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely amazing. So, I was obviously browsing through your websites, and I just see, the work that you're doing. It's just phenomenal, and also very emotional because you're having to deal with children.
Mhm.
Oh, so I just want to kind of understand a bit more about your own journey. What actually led you to this amazing work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I wish it weren't this way, but a lot of times those who are very passionate about specific topics that, you know, include hurting marginalized people often means you've gone through something similar, and that's definitely my story. Yeah, as a survivor of child sexual abuse, growing up in a home where I was sexually abused and feeling like I couldn't talk about it for many, many years. That's kind of where it came out of. Wanting
Absolutely.
other people to find their voice because I know how important that is to not only the healing journey, but also to prevention of further abuse for others.
Very true, very true. So what is it? Again, this is like from my own personal experience as well. And I know so many people out there who have been told to hush. Why are children still told to not talk about what happened to them?
Hmm. Well, I think there's a lot of fear, you know, for others who haven't been affected. I think there's a lot of fear of what will this look like for my relationship with this person? What will this look like for our family? Because there's so much stigma surrounding something like sexual abuse, and a lot of families want to keep it hush hush. They don't want this to come out because they're afraid of what will people think about me. So I think there's a lot of fear. That's the biggest thing. And then for the survivor, also the fear, you know, of what will people think about me? Um, will this ruin my future, my relationships, my job opportunities? The stereotype surrounding sexual abuse has created a stigma that creates a lot of fear in people to be able to talk about it. But I do really think that we have to talk about it in order to overcome it.
My God, yeah, 100%. That's the only way to heal is to get it out because otherwise it just entraps into our bodies and causes all sorts of illnesses and mental health issues. So, and that's the biggest
Mhm,
issue when it comes to trauma. And I guess
mhm.
it's similar to stress, right? It's all
That's
interlinked.
right.
It comes out in horrible other ways. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I just wanted to
Well,
ask.
and I think too, like there's so much fear, even if you haven't ever told, right? If you're maybe still being victimized, you're
Mm,
afraid your family will be torn apart if you tell. You're afraid no one will believe you. You're afraid you'll be hurt even more than you already have been. So there's so many reasons why children keep a secret, and so many reasons why adult survivors continue to just keep it a secret.
yeah, it is sad, yeah. And so what are the kind of biggest challenges that you face currently when you're working with the children?
Mm. Well, and I now I'm working with young and old because the average age, at least in where I'm from in America, of disclosure is 52 years old. So someone who's been abused as a child holds on to the secret not only for their childhood, but most of their lives. And so being able to talk about it even as an adult, there's so much freedom in that. And so no matter what age group I'm working with towards healing, I think the biggest thing that holds us back is shame.
Mm,
Shame, not only is what keeps us silent, but it also really perpetuates a lot of false beliefs that we have about ourselves, our worth, about the world, about other people, about God or higher power. Like there's so much wrapped up in that shame. And that is where we have to begin to unpack it because if we're believing so many false beliefs or false guilt over what we have experienced, it really does impact everything in our lives. And so that I think is the root of a lot of freedom, a lot of healing is when you can get to that. Where is that shame coming from? And is that actually yours to carry? And when a survivor, no matter how old they are, can let go of that, that's where real freedom and healing comes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, shame. Oh God, shame, guilt, and also self-blame as well. They're just
That's right.
all associated with what happened to us, as a child, and we carry that, don't we, into
That's
adult.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, and many survivors, I mean, I would say the majority of the survivors that I work with carry a false belief that it somehow was their fault, that the abuse somehow was the victim's fault. And that is the one that I really try to go after because out of that belief are so many other false beliefs that it's almost like a domino effect. If you can get to that core root false belief, a lot of them just kind of topple down as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, for those who may not be familiar, can you explain how One Voice helps survivors and communities?
Absolutely. So, OneVoice was established in 2002. I was very, very young. I began sharing my story on college campuses and conferences and even churches and places like that, where I knew there were hurting people who, one in three girls, one in six boys are sexually abused by the time they turn 18. And so I knew no matter where I went, there would be people who related to me. And so it just began out of almost like a movement to want other people, as hard as it was for me to tell my story, it every single time allowed someone else to step forward and say me too. It was a Me Too movement way before the Me Too movement started. And I knew that when someone was able to identify that they had also gone through it, I felt like it was like the gift of going second. If I could go first and say all the hard things, so many other people could step forward out of their darkness and be able to say me too. It was the gift of going second. And I've always believed that that moment was very, very powerful for these people, even if they weren't even able to say the whole thing, just identifying. There was a lot of freedom there. So that's where it really started. And then subsequently began to write some books and really the initial focus and continues to be still, but is bringing awareness to sexual abuse because no one was talking about it for so long. Now we have amazing voices out there, lots of other courageous survivors speaking out, but that's where it began. And then, now, thanks to the pandemic, I actually took my time since I was home to create an online community for survivors. And that is like just one of the most beautiful things that I've really been a part of because for years and years, I felt like I was going into different cities and lighting a fire and bringing forth survivors to begin their healing journeys, connecting them with local resources. And now I've been able to walk with survivors in this 8-week e-course. It's called Unleash. I created basically 8 weeks of film and journal prompts. So contemplative journal prompts for survivors to sort of walk through different topics that come up along the journey of healing. And then we meet weekly online and we unpack those topics and share our reactions, our personal stories as much as we feel comfortable in this safe, confidential, sacred, truly environment online with other survivors. And that's been such a beautiful thing. That's been going on now for 4 years. And truly, it's one of the most amazing spaces because survivors of sexual abuse, it's like we speak our own language. And
Mm.
when you get in a room where it's only other survivors who can basically complete your sentence or know what you're about to say, it's just so comforting and it's so validating. And so that's kind of been the new addition to One Voice in the last few years that I've been really proud of. It's called Unleash.
Oh, wow.
So
Do you
thanks
know
for
what?
asking that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that just really touched my heart then. Because I can actually see the passion in, in what you're doing. And, this is obviously
Mm,
what you were obviously born to do. And, I can see that.
mm,
And just for everyone who's obviously benefiting from your amazing course and your support, I just think, wow, good for you and good for them,
mm.
that they're in the right place for this. And so, because it obviously,
Yeah, I think there's so much pain that happens in the world, and there's so many things, hard things that we go through that should never be happening, right, to people. But I do really believe in the power of our story and to be able to take even the hardest, most shameful things that happen to us and to turn it into something good. And so, though I don't think that what happened to me as a child, being sexually abused over the course of my entire childhood, that is something I'm still healing from. And no, I don't think it happened to me so I could help other survivors, but I do believe that that pain can be used for good. And that's my hope in all of this work.
amazing, yeah. And so, because I know that you deal with sexual abuse and also human trafficking. So, what happens? Do people contact you directly and tell you that that they've been trafficked? So, what how kind of far into their journey do they start to accept what happened to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we are contacted by many, but also we go where they are.
Oh,
So, for many years, we were going in other countries and, reaching people in very vulnerable situations, usually impoverished communities in other countries like Cambodia, especially, where child sex tourism is very popular. And oftentimes children are targeted, their families are targeted by traffickers, and they lie to these families, telling them, we'll take your child. You can't afford to raise this child. We'll take your child and we will give them an education. We'll give them a great job. They'll make money. We'll give them a life that you cannot provide. And so many families are duped into selling their kid, putting their kid on a bus, thinking they're going to give them a great life, and in fact it's hell on earth. And so that's where it really started, and the nonprofit is called One Voice for Freedom, and that's our anti-trafficking nonprofit. And so what we did was we went to these very poor communities and we began to train. We used to give presentations, right? We give these presentations, this educational information about human trafficking and what it looks like and what it would look like if someone came to your village and told you all of these things. Don't believe them. Don't put your children on the bus. So that's where it all started. It's been such a beautiful thing seeing so many protected and saved from ever becoming sex slaves. And so over time, then we began working in the actual brothels and meeting with little girls who were being trafficked, and they were in locked rooms, and helping them to get resourced and the courage to leave when they could. That was a really big move that we did, partnering with other organizations in these countries. And then coming back home where I am in America, realizing there's so many here that actually their story is similar to mine. And that's how they became trafficked here. Someone who was sexually abused in their home by someone in their family, a family friend, someone that they trusted,
Mm.
and then ran away. And see, for years and years, I always said, I wanted to run away. And I planned how to run away over and over and over again from the time I was 5 until I was 14 when I finally told my mom. But between that time, the number of times I wanted to run away, I mean, I can't even count, but I never did. And so when I started speaking, especially in America, I was speaking about my story and I was saying this. I began to meet girls and women who would come up to me and say, Nicole, I always wanted to run away too, and I did. I was sexually abused like you in my home, and I did run away. And that's when they met someone who they thought was going to be the answer to all their problems and ended up being their worst nightmare because they ended up getting trafficked. And so my heart just was like breaking into shattered pieces because I knew that could be a story for any of us who were sexually abused by someone in our home, running away and getting picked up by someone who would hurt us even worse, who would take advantage of us as a young, vulnerable kid running away, having daddy issues, whatever it is. And so that's when I got really passionate about it in America as well. And so now we're doing a lot of programming here in the United States for one is prevention. It is targeting schools where we go into schools and give assemblies and help children understand the red flags for trafficking and also to get help if you're being sexually abused. You are honestly one of the most vulnerable children to becoming trafficked later. And
Yeah.
so to get in front of the problem is a big part of what One Voice for Freedom does. And on the other side, we go to where those who are already being trafficked are. So in my city of Columbus, Ohio, there's women that are working, downtown in the cities and different places that are being abused, that are being exploited, that are being trafficked. And so we go to where they are, we provide hot meals, we build relationship, build trust to where when they feel ready to reclaim their power, we resource them with what they need to get out of that situation. We don't do rescues, we don't do raids, we don't believe in that. What we
Yeah.
do believe is in equipping them to be empowered to leave when they're ready. And so yeah, so it's getting in front of the problem and it's also kind of providing support for those who've already been trafficked. And so I'm really proud of all of that. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, oh my God, it's amazing. And yeah, I mean, I salute you. The fact that,
Yeah.
you've gone global with this and you're helping, all these countries because I know that Africa's, the trafficking
Mhm.
very
Absolutely.
rife there and obviously, India as well and,
Yeah.
Cambodia and I don't know which other countries, but yeah, it's all over. And
All of them, really. Yes. Some more than others, but absolutely, yes. I think we just need to build more awareness so people understand the problem and don't blame the victim,
yeah,
right? Understand that this is a worldwide problem and we have to get to the bottom of it and not victim blame.
exactly.
That's the only way to get there.
Exactly. And the fact that you're in America also kind of educating schools, I just think that's amazing. Obviously being a mom of, a 6-year-old, I'm just imagining going into his school and giving a talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I just feel like they probably wouldn't be ready for it because it's hitting home on quite, a real hard hitting topic. So have you found that setback as well, tackling school?
Yeah, again, it comes back to fear.
Mm, it
I'm
does.
sorry, my dog.
It's okay.
I'm glad this isn't live. Do you want me to wait? Yeah, so I think it goes back to a lot of fear, fear from even parents, even school staff. It is hard to talk about hard things. And we sometimes want to pretend like the world's beautiful, full of rainbows and
Yeah.
unicorns. And that's what we want to just pretend for our kids. But I don't think that's what keeps them safe. Sweeping hard topics like sexual abuse or human trafficking under the rug doesn't keep us safe, right? We
Exactly.
have to talk about these hard issues and equip our kids. They're capable. We just have to give them the language that's appropriate for their age. But kids are ready for this. Why? Because the world is ready for it. It's out there, and we just have to empower them to be a solution and to also see signs and know when to speak up.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. And yeah, I'm really glad that we're doing this as well because I feel like, it's going to help to raise awareness, just by talking about it and for this podcast to go out and just to just no try to normalize, these topics and not to make them so hush hush because we've had enough of hush hush, haven't we? It's time to speak.
That's right.
Oh wow. So obviously, you're very much into storytelling. I mean, do you do a lot of storytelling within your community? Is this like a process that you try and teach as well?
Well, I think it's really important for our healing journey. I think healing is a lifelong journey. And I think those of us who have a story that's full of trauma, pain, abuse, being able to tell our story in safe places is one of the most healing things that we can do.
Mm.
And for many of us, our story comes out in little bits at a time. And so, if you have a safe place to tell parts of your story, that can be really healing. But as you go about life, you might remember new things. You might then be aware of some new memory that you weren't aware of a decade ago. Even you brought up being a mom, right? Like as life goes on, new challenges arise. And maybe your child reaches the age when you were abused, and now you have some new thoughts or memories about what you went through. It's good to be able to continue to tell that story
Mm.
and tell that story not only from your current perspective, but also from the perspective of your younger self, right? I think there's a lot of power in being able to access what did my younger self feel, and to be able to have a place where you can get that out, get that story out. And maybe it's just through journaling. Maybe you don't have a safe person yet. Maybe, you haven't connected with a trusted therapist yet.
Mm.
I think journaling is really important for storytelling. It's getting out the feelings, it's processing the emotion, so that it doesn't turn into some sort of unhealthy coping mechanism, or yucky feelings, or always being triggered, on edge, hypervigilance. I mean, there's so many ways that we can be triggered as a trauma survivor and not get that feeling out, not process the emotion or the memory or the thoughts, and it can just fester, right? So I think storytelling is not only good for healing, but I also think it's good for the listener, right? I
Yeah.
think having empathetic listeners is really powerful, and to be a listener and to know how important that is to be a recipient of someone's story is important. And your response to a trauma survivor is very, very impactful. So, not trying to fix them, but being a great listener and only asking, enough questions to allow them to continue talking, but never expecting their whole story to be told, and never um, giving really advice. I mean, that's not your job as a listener. Your job is to listen and to love, and just to continue to be a safe space for that story to unfold. And I think, yeah, I think it's really healing for both parties. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah. And there's something about writing, because it obviously uses the prefrontal cortex and it just helps to bring logic to what happened. And, because we're so stuck in the, fight, flight or freeze response, that I just find, like, especially for myself and other people that I've spoken to, just when you write it down, all your
Mm.
emotions kind of turn to logic, it's like,
Yeah,
it just makes everything makes sense when you start
that's
writing.
right. It
Yeah.
does. It does. And I think it helps, being able to talk about it, being able to say the thing out loud. It does so much good. I mean, it's validating, I think. It also helps you sometimes to really see, like if you hear yourself telling your story out loud,
Mm.
you might finally realize that actually wasn't my fault,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're not talking about it, you're not telling the story, you're not writing it down, you're not processing it, you're just continuing to believe the same thing that you always believed about it. But when you say it, when you speak it, you might be able to see, oh, wait, like this is actually a false belief I have, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think it also helps us just with our self-worth and knowing like that our story matters. There's so much power in knowing our story matters. And that is why the survivor community is so important for the healing journey,
Absolutely.
because you hear other people sharing their stories and you relate, and you're thinking thoughts towards their story that you could also be thinking towards yours. And it begins to really help with self-acceptance, like you brought up earlier.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. That. Thank you. Yeah. So, during your kind of journey with working with survivors and communities globally, is there any particular story or moment that's deeply impacted you and
Mm.
reinforced your commitment to your cause?
Oh, I feel like I have one a month. Like I'm just always like, oh, that like this is a reminder why this work matters. It just
Yeah.
happens so often. I mean,
Wow.
most recently has been in our Unleash groups, like just watching a survivor moving from like not being able to really say much to really being so empowered in their life or setting boundaries with people who continue to not like believe them or just watching them flourish as a parent. It's just so exciting. And then the anti-trafficking work, there was a mom that she had unknowingly given her daughters to a trafficker. She was a single mom, and it was just very painful for her because she um, couldn't connect. She didn't know where they were. She just completely lost connection with them, and they were only teenagers.
Oh, God.
And she just kept in touch with her and just helped her because she too is a victim of human trafficking,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so she was very important to our mission to continue to support her, even financially, at times. And she kept calling and just saying, like, have you found my daughters? Have you? Like, I just kept thinking, this woman needs to give up hope because this hope is just hurting her. And I
Yeah,
remember saying that to my board and just feeling like, who am I saying this out loud? This is horrible. And would you know, within the next month, I got a phone call that one of her daughters was returned. And I was just in complete shock. And she was just so grateful because she said that she had almost taken her life because of the pain and the grief was so much, but we had kept her alive, just believing in her and helping her, to the next step in her life. And so just so grateful because that was a reminder to me that there's always hope. Like we can't ever give up hope
never.
because, yeah, hope is always there. So that was another story that's really kept me going. When compassion fatigue sets in.
Yeah, absolutely. Goodness, I can imagine. I mean, it's the fact that, one of her daughters came back. So now I guess she still has hope for the other. Why would
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah,
think, yeah.
exactly. And on the awareness side, it's the stories of, I go to a city and I speak at a school and then come home and you don't know what happened. But then later I get these emails where it said, 6 years ago you spoke at my school and I wanted to
Uh,
tell you that after you left, I decided for the first time to tell somebody about what I had been going through, what I was currently going through, being sexually abused. And,
yeah,
that day changed my life forever because now look, this is where I'm at. I mean, it's these emails that I get. It's
uh,
always just like 6 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so cool to see how you can be a part of planting a seed and you may never know what happens,
yeah.
but just trusting the process that it
Oh,
matters, this work matters, and that people are being helped whether
yeah.
you find out about it or not. But
So
hearing those stories is very, very encouraging.
it is absolutely, yeah. And I guess, the same goes for, when you're an author, like you don't know who's reading your book, a lot of the times they
Yes.
won't contact you. So you just got to
Yeah,
trust in the process.
that's right. That's exactly right. I know the number of people that like pick up my book in a random library, somewhere random. Like I don't know where these books are. And like it was the thing that turned the light bulb on for them. Like they'll say, Nicole, I related to your story. Your story is so much like mine. And that was the
Wow.
first time I ever heard anybody talk about it. And like, thank you for writing this book. Like, that's so great to know that. And that's
Yeah.
where I think, like, even your work, like putting this podcast out, you don't know who's going to be listening or where in the world they're at, but it could
Yeah.
be the thing that turns a light bulb on for somebody and helps them. And
Exactly.
that's why it all matters.
It does matter. Oh, amazing that, yeah. And so what would be your piece of advice to someone out there who may be struggling, who haven't yet spoken up because they may not
Mm,
be able to trust in anybody just yet?
yeah, that's a great question. Well, I would say, first of all, no, you're not alone. I mean, the number of survivors that are out there. Many have never told their stories as well, and it's very hard, and I understand why. But I do think that telling is the first step to healing. Sharing your secret is the first step to healing, and it matters. And if the first person you tell doesn't respond well or in the right way or believe you or make you feel really safe, I hope you'll find the courage to tell again. Tell until you find the right person, the safe person that believes you, that reminds you it wasn't your fault, and that will be there for you when you need to talk.
Beautiful, that, yeah. And what do you think globally we can all be doing to break the stigma around these topics?
It's great. Well, I think breaking the stigma around these topics is just about being willing to talk about it, not shying away when hard things come across the news, right? Like we are
True.
hearing stories about sexual assault all the time,
Yeah.
human trafficking all the time. And instead of turning the channel because we feel like, well, we don't want to know about that,
Yeah.
listen to the stories, listen to survivors talk about it,
Yeah.
and talk to others about it
Mhm.
because these things are happening. And though maybe we don't want to think that it would happen to somebody close to us, it already has. And statistically, you know someone who has gone through this. And so by denying it, shying away from it, being too afraid of it, you're telling the people in your life who've experienced this that you don't want to hear their story either. And so I would just encourage you to be sensitive to these kinds of things. Have empathy, put yourself in other people's shoes, and don't just try to put it under the rug. But in fact, I think we need to bring it out into the light because that's the only way. If no one talks about what's going on in the darkness, it will never heal from it and it will never stop. So we have to be willing to talk about it in order to stop it and to heal ourselves.
Amazing, thank you. And so where can my listeners find you?
Hmm. Yeah, I would love for people to check out my website. It's iamonevoice.org, iamonevoice.org. And from there, you'll learn all about my speaking. My books are on there. The 8-week e-course and support group that I lead myself is on there. It's called Unleash. And there's also a link to the anti-trafficking website, One Voice for Freedom as well. But the website's iamonevoice.org. And also check out the One Voice podcast.
Oh, yay, love that. Amazing. And I'll be dropping all the links in this podcast episode. So please do get in touch with our amazing Nicole. It's
Thank
been an
you.
absolute blessing to have you on this show. You're making such an extraordinary impact, and I salute you for the work that you're doing. Globally. Amazing.
Oh, back at you. Same to you.
And blessings for the future. I can already see that you've got such a bright future ahead. You've got so much going on for you.
That means the world to me. Thank you.
Amazing. So, my listeners, that's all we got time for today. And hope you enjoyed the show. And, as Nicole said, it's time to break the stigma. Let's normalize these conversations because that's the only
Yeah.
thing that's going to help make the biggest impact. Let's help our children because they're our future. Stay blessed, my friends, and I'll see you in the next episode.